Welcome everyone to SaaScast, the podcast that talks you through the steps you need to future-proof your product, whether that's building the ultimate marketing team or taking your products global. Our guests will help you grow, scale up, and work smarter.
You've made churn a company-wide task, basically, is what Dealfront has done. But I'm interested in what that looks like in practice. Take me through, because it sounds great, but I want to know what that looks like in kind of actionable terms.
Yeah, for sure. So, in simple terms, as you've said, we turned it into a company-wide responsibility. And what that really means is that we have a project, which we call Project Brailsford. Again, leaning back on that idea of marginal gains before, there's a famous guy, Dave Brailsford, who kind of pioneered that theory, and we've hijacked it for the purpose of our goals. Where basically that project has the ability to touch the various different activities of departments across the company, where it makes sense, right? So this is something we've been running now we're actually in our second year of this project. We'll probably run it, forevermore. Well, what we've basically done is we came together as a kind of management team with board members as well, and started to focus in on what do we believe are the causes of churn? What do we believe are the strategies that we can employ to solve that problem? And over time, what we've tried to do to make it that cross-team company-wide collaborative effort is to make the areas of focus, the pillars of the project, if you will, to make them cross-departmental as much as possible. So rather than just saying, right, here's the list of things CS is going to do, and here's the list of things the sales team's going to do in product, instead it's, okay, one of the pillars is, for example, stickiness of the product. There's things that each individual department, which is focused on working with customers, can do in order to make that happen. So then we put activities underneath those, and then we focus on those, together over time to sort of drive change, basically. And how it kind of functionally works is we get together on a monthly basis to review progress and to do workshops to focus on specific items. And you've got, our most senior leaders in the company, you've got board members as well joining the project and kind of giving their expertise of areas of focus that we could obviously lean on based on their experience. And then we reinforce that wherever we possibly can. So we've done all hands meetings for the whole company to understand why this is a priority. We talk about it in all of the subsequent all hands that come up. When it comes to kind of senior leadership compensation, there's obviously an element of that is based on overall company growth, which in and of itself is based on churn as well, right? So all of these things have been lined up to make it so that this is something that the right people are going to focus on a regular basis. Because we're firm believers, if we get the right people together on a regular basis, they're going to take the actions that are going to be required to drive us to where we need to go. It's kind of as simple as that.
Are most of your team, and maybe it varies, are most of your team remote workers, or are they hybrids? Do you have offices?
It's kind of a mix. So a lot of the team is remote, but we also have offices. We have a headquarters in Germany, so we have a whole CSM and support team in Germany, and we also have a CS team in Helsinki as well, in Finland. So we have some people in offices, and we have maybe, let's say, 2/3 of the team remote at this point.
Yeah, it's a long way. I'm just curious, because I think in a way, some companies have been operating remote for years and years, but I feel like it's kind of become a thing that people are talking about more now, because obviously post-pandemic, more and more people are working remote or working hybrid. I'm just curious if the kind of spotlight that's been put on remote work in recent years has forced people to kind of reevaluate how you kind of align people on remote teams behind kind of common goals and everything. Because there is that thing, isn't there, of out of the room syndrome? I don't know if you've heard of that, where it's kind of like you underestimate the way that people soak in knowledge when they're together.
Yes,
so I was just kind of wondering if there were particular ways with your team, where people are scattered, how do you ensure that everyone is kind of aware of what's going on, everyone's aligned behind common goals? Is it different in particular, do you think, from how you would be working in an office? Or
yeah, it's definitely different. So maybe for a bit of context, when I first joined the company that was lead leader, I was at that point maybe 80% of the staff, including myself, were remote, and I've worked remote the kind of whole time, right? So we've had to build processes around remote kind of by default that would be designed to kind of disseminate information in the most efficient way possible. I don't think it's something that you can easily kind of perfect, but what we try to do, and we try to do this in the CS team in general at a management level, what we try to do is to reduce the jeopardy in everything that we're doing, by which I mean, for example, if you talk about making sure that everybody's focused on a project, for example, and create as many opportunities as possible for the group or for individuals to communicate on the project and to talk about it. You want to have a single source of truth. So we have a Slack channel where we have our monthly presentation, so on and so forth. And you want to create a situation where it's actually quite difficult to miss the information that's going on. You don't want to hammer people with the same thing again and again. But you want to just make sure that they have access to the information where they need it, when they need it. And just to just you kind of have to build for remote, I would say. Like the number one learning when it comes to how to do that, I would say, is it's tempting for a group of people that have always been in office and then they're suddenly working with a remote team to say, okay, the only way to solve this problem is by doing kind of copious numbers of meetings. Like let's do 8 hours of meetings a day, and then everybody will be constantly talking and everything's fine. Obviously an exaggeration, but you kind of know what I mean. But what really needs to happen is you need to produce the content or the information or the whatever it might be, and put it somewhere that the person can use in the context of what they're trying to solve. So, for example, if your CSMs are looking at they are having a conversation with a customer, or they've recently had one with a customer, and it looks like that customer's going to churn, you need resources somewhere that they can lean on, where somebody else has had the same problem before, and they've got strategy to deal with it. So it's about producing that contextualized information that they can then use in the context of the situation, as opposed to what can sometimes happen with this hybrid environment where it's literally just kind of information overload all the time.
Yeah.
Does that
I
make
think
sense?
I think it's great as well. Like, particularly in the realm of SaaS, I think there's numerous tools that have come out in recent years to aid people in those practices. Like, let's kind of aid people in the remote environment. Like, you have things like we use Loom a lot in my company, which is a great one. Again, it's kind of, it caters to like different people's learning styles. Again, that some people don't want to be sat there behind a computer, reading loads of text. Some people prefer to watch. Well, I myself prefer to watch like videos in the SOPs file of
Yeah.
people actually doing it, and then I like to do the task itself and watch as I'm doing it. That's how I learn. But yeah, I think it's great. I think people are adapting to it more and more every day, and I think it sounds like you guys have got it in hand.
Yeah,
100%.
I would say so. Yeah, like we've had a few years of experience with it, but I do think what you just said is quite crucial in a sense. It's about
Yeah.
catering to the learning style of the individual, but it's also about like having the content ready for the need that is now in front of you. Like trying to learn things
Yeah.
in the abstract is far more difficult than problem comes up, content is there ready to help me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. So let's talk about kind of departmental collaboration then. I think, now correct me if I'm wrong about this, but from what I understand, customer success is kind of relatively new. It's been around since what, like the 90s or something, late 90s, something like that,
Something
or
like that, yeah. Depending on, I
yeah,
think Salesforce was the originator of it, so maybe
yeah.
early 2000, something like that, yeah.
Yeah, maybe the term was coined in the 90s and it became more popularized in the noughties. It's usually like that, isn't it? But
Yeah.
I'm wondering, is there any friction sometimes historically with like how CS interacts with sales and marketing? And I'm just wondering how your CS team collaborates with the other departments such as sales or marketing or things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's the classic friction point, I suppose, right? And
Yeah.
I think the cause of that is quite simple, like from a marketing or sales perspective, they're often
Yeah.
engaging in the art of the possible, and which is fair enough because you have to make sales and you have to tell a story, and that's obviously very different to when you have to deliver that story afterwards. So
Yeah.
um, I would say it's a classic friction point. It's a classic area where these things happen, but
Mm.
it's an easy enough problem to overcome. As long as you have clear communication lines between people at various different levels of leadership and
Mm.
individuals, so that you've got almost kind of like partners in crime. So salesperson might be selling something most frequently, and they most often be handing off to the same CSM, same whoever. As long as they've got a good working relationship and as long as they can have conversations, it makes it a lot easier higher up and vice versa as well. So I think it depends on, in terms of making that relationship work really well, what it
Mm.
depends on is an open collaboration and a desire to continually do better, right? Because each of those departments, marketing, sales, CS, all have their role to play in producing that ideal customer story or that customer success at the end of the day, right? And what you want is an open door so that what the sales team is learning in the market, they're handing that over to the CS department, especially if you consider that for a platform like Dealfront, for example, many of our actual product users are salespeople. So it would make sense for us to have a good relationship with our own sales team, right? But also vice versa, where you have like the CS team is gathering information, they're learning things, they're learning about like what is a good client for us, where can we deliver the best, so that that information can be passed back to the sales team, especially at a leadership level. It can sometimes influence the strategy of the next customer that we acquire, because ultimately what this should be is kind of like a flywheel where every step of the journey we're getting better at something, so sales team acquires a customer. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, we love all of our customers, but let's just say for one reason or another it's a mediocre customer. If we have an open door, we can pass that information back and say, look, for the following reasons, we think you should actually acquire more of this type of customer because we can serve them better. There's more expansion potential. It's better for everybody, whatever that may be, right? That information could be passed back. If you've got a receptive leadership team on the other side of that transaction or the other side of our company, then that can power how we improve over time. Right? And that I think it just comes back to, as many problems in business come down to, it comes back to attitude, right? Like, are we all trying to just grow and develop together? And if we are, then that friction can be overcome.
I think one of the things that I see, and I think it's, like I think in a lot of modern businesses, we have our KPIs and we have our OKRs. And I think I understand why it's there. Obviously, people need targets. They have to know, they have to be able to measure their progress. But I think there is a danger sometimes that people get locked into silos by KPIs because it becomes a point where they don't really care that much anymore about other people's struggles. As long as they're hitting their targets. And if other departments are doing something that is hindering their targets as well, that can cause a lot of friction. Like if somebody doesn't have something prepared in time or something like that because of something out of their hands or whatever it is. But I'm just wondering, well, number one, how do you make everyone's KPIs everyone's business, basically? How do you make everyone sort of care about each other's targets? And number two, I think, you talked about attitude. And I think what we're getting on here is kind of culture, is company culture. And I think that's something that is very powerful, and perhaps not as tangible. How do you go about because I think some companies, they can get to a point where the company is just kind of rotted from the inside and it's just really hard to fix it at that point. But how do you get started building a positive culture, positive working culture and I think that probably leads to customer centricity. Actually, it probably leads, when people are proud of their jobs, proud of their role, the customers probably see it, I think. I don't know, what would your thoughts be on that?
I would 100% agree with you. I mean, like if we take what you just said in reverse, sort of, you talk about culture. Culture is something to fight for and something that you have to work hard to produce. It's something that we're very proud of in our company, and obviously the people I work with every day most closely is the CS department, and I think it's something that we've actively cultivated over time. We, from the moment that we hire people and we bring them in and we do onboarding, we're focused on working with them on a level. We treat people with maturity, with respect, with everything else. We don't, if they're working remote, we don't kind of chase them around. We know that they're doing their jobs. We expect that they're doing their jobs. We kind of back our team members. If something goes wrong with a customer interaction or whatever else, our assumption isn't that the CSM did something wrong. It's what can we do differently next time? What should we as a leadership team be doing differently? And we try and do it in both directions. We try to create a situation where people want to take on responsibility within the company to kind of bring it forward at all levels. So we have, for example, we have quite important projects in the CS department that are being led by CSMs or even junior CSMs every once in a while, right? Because we know that they're the right person for the job. And then it's our job at a leadership level, talking specifically about CS, but it happens across the company, no doubt. It's our job at a leadership level to try and cultivate that kind of air of responsibility. You're responsible for something, a project, the way that we're doing things, blah, blah, blah. And that I think it creates the right attitude. It creates an attitude of we're all building something together. Let's make it the best that it possibly can be. And then
Yeah.
once you've got that attitude in place, then you've got momentum all of a sudden, and then you can build from there. But I think it's not something that happens by accident. Like you have to actively cultivate the culture that you want. And I think you have to be looking at it from the perspective of, fundamentally, how do we create an environment where we actually want to work together?
Thank you for joining us on this episode of SaaScast. For more top insights from the leading minds in SaaS, subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss a thing.